Welcome to the Social Media Church podcast. I'm Neil Smith, and in this episode of the podcast, we are talking about whether social media is still relevant in 2023. Aaron, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I mean, coincidentally, this is our last podcast ever. We're hanging it up after this, and
Yes.
we're gonna sell our audience. We're gonna sell each of you to the Web3 cryptocurrency bidders.
Yes.
And this is our last episode.
Yes, we are creating our own cryptocurrency, and we are moving into the metaverse. And so we will see you with our avatars in the metaverse, and this is the end of Web 2. As we know it. So it's not worth talking about anymore if Web 2 and social media no longer exist. Aaron, this is the question that I feel like I'm getting because I have become obsessed a bit with Web3, which
Yes.
is generally, there's a lot of things people talk about with Web3, and that's metaverse, that's cryptocurrency, that's NFTs, that's the decentralization of the internet. And
Yeah, we've been talking about that for a while.
yeah,
And I feel like
totally
I
new.
get the sense that, and the only reason I would be here too. So what I'm about to say, don't feel bad if you're there. Just admit it. The only reason I'm not there is because one of my best friends is Neil Smith, and I learn things. But I have a feeling a good portion of our audience doesn't even understand why it's called Web3. What in the world is Web3? Web3D? Is it avatars? Is it like what in the world is Web3? And so Nils and I today wanted to break down the history of web, just
Yes.
as we answer the question: is social media still relevant in 2023? Yes. And we need to start here because I do feel like, Nils, people are starting to ask this question, and as we're trying to prioritize there's speculations of a recession, and as churches are trying to figure out where their budgets are going to go, it's pretty easy to cut the social media guy. It's pretty easy to cut the content guy. It's pretty easy to do these things. And so we just feel like it's really important to address the question, not to justify this podcast, which this is not the last episode, by the way, but because we really want to be responsible about helping you think for the next 5, 10, 15, 50 years. Yes. It's really important to address this question, or else why are we here in the first place?
So let's start with Web 1. And Aaron, I am curious, do you remember the first time you got on the internet, or your first kind of like,
gosh,
what was the beginning of the internet for you?
Well, it was dial-up.
Okay.
So it was for sure that. I'm trying to think what my first experience of the internet was. I remember my first experience of like texting, which is not necessarily the internet, but I do have a vivid memory of like, wow, you can send a message to somebody else. And it was like with my dad's work phone. It wasn't even like, it wasn't anything crazy. And then as far as like the internet goes, I wish I could tell you what the first I'm sure it had something to do with sports. Or maybe email. I don't know, to be honest. I can tell you with my friends though, the first thing I remember is AOL Instant Messenger, which is a part of your origin story as the social media guide. But that's what I remember. So for perspective, also, I was born in 1991. So that makes me, young. But Nils, do you remember? You would have more of a fighting chance at remembering that first moment, hopping on and riding the wave that is the internet.
Yeah,
surfing the web.
I remember when my dad got a home computer in the house, and it was probably 1997, 1996, somewhere in there, and we had this Netscape with the CD and dial-up internet, and I just remember, and then learned about email and how you could then send messages, basically like write letters to each other. And so, it's a really just fascinating, I have access to all this information, and it was the web, and it was like, I can go down this path of the web and this path. And I don't even think search was a thing yet. It was just like, I could click sports and then click this and then click that. And it would take me down this pathway into information. And
that's crazy. I need to pause here for a second because I was mocking, people for maybe not knowing why it's called Web3. I guess to be honest, I didn't even really know why it was called web, like web. And it was literally a track, like all I can think of. And in this generation that has not experienced without it, right? Gen Z or whatever's after Gen Z, they've stopped labeling them.
Yes.
Search is an integral part of the internet. Like internet and search are synonymous, but there was a version of the internet that had nothing to do with search.
Yes.
And it was, like you said, it's a web, and you would go down these different
Yes.
predetermined strands that you couldn't stray off of, but it was better than the dictionary. I mean, it was like, it was new. So
Yes.
that,
And
so
we
that's
use
why it
that
was called
back
the web.
button a lot, so it'd be like, okay, I want to go back
Do, 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 do.
this choice, in the web. And it was, we called it the World Wide Web, and that's where that www came from. And we could now, basically though, this was the information superhighway. And that's where we now had instant access to information, and real time communication, through email,
Right.
and that was the power of the Web 1.0, and the information superhighway, and it was life changing, for news
Yes.
and information.
Literally.
And yeah, so that was Web 1.0. And then the web, really what happened on the web is it kind of goes like Web 1 to Web 2, which would be like AOL. Like then you've got mail, and it almost becomes a little bit more interactive, in ways. Then you add search into Web 1 still. And then and then there just became a point where it's like, okay, now there's a whole new internet when it became the interactive web with social media. Search became even more significant part of that. Mobile was a lot of the hardware, high speed internet. We moved from dial up internet to, high speed internet, wireless internet. Yeah, you used to always have to have a wire, to have the
Yeah.
internet. And so it really kind of took on a whole new dimension of what the internet could do. And you had e-commerce. You think about like Amazon and eBay,
Totally.
and being able to buy and sell things on the internet. So it wasn't just you could get information about what was available in the world. Now you can actually buy it off of a website.
I
And
do remember eBay. I
yeah,
do remember the early stages of eBay and having experiences with that where like I remember when just being able to buy something without bidding on it was like an upgrade, right? Like it was
yeah,
before it was like I hope my internet works so I can get the last click on this
yes,
on this
yes,
item,
yes,
to buying something immediately with Amazon, and then I think eBay had the instant buy as well.
yeah,
But yeah, it became interactive. What
yeah,
was the first Wi-Fi experience? And I want to say, while you think about that, there's also an interesting correlation between a lot of the internet has been shaped off of the device itself as well, right? And so what you wouldn't be thinking about Wi-Fi when you have a big giant desktop computer that's not going
yes,
anywhere, but then
yes,
you have the invention of like, oh, but now it's on my lap.
yes,
Now it's in my pocket on a
yes,
phone, right? And so there is a correlation always between the hardware and what the internet needs to be based on where the attention on the internet is being
yes.
experienced. But what was your first experience with Wi-Fi?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to even remember. I mean, I kind of feel like it was. I remember my first laptop was my dad's hand-me-down Compaq,
Nice.
laptop, and I remember I downloaded so much, illegal music off of Napster, and so that's what I remember. I primarily used it for, and yeah, I mean, so it was just a really interesting thing of like I can have the internet without wires, but it's like
Yes.
where's it coming from? Like,
Yes.
how does this happen? Where this doesn't make sense. And it just, like we just kept seeing progression to faster laptops, more,
Yes.
accessible laptops that had batteries that lasted more than 30 minutes.
That's right.
And so we kept seeing a progression of hardware and access to the internet. And that's what we continue to see of like 5G internet now and
Yep.
Starlink satellites. And so these are things, and even now virtual reality headsets that are
Yes.
introducing Web 3. I think the thing to before we jump from Web 2 to Web 3,
Yeah.
is that with Web 2, the interactive web, the information superhighway didn't go away. We still have all the information. we still use email. We
You
still have,
probably opened your email today. I have. I
yes,
guarantee every listener on here has opened, from the youngest to the oldest listener. You've opened your email today.
yes. So email and Web 1 is still foundationally key to the internet
Yep.
and what it is. Web 2 is an addition to the internet, it was an expansion of the internet and services and opportunities and availabilities that were provided that were interactive in nature. And so I say then Web 3 is what we are perceiving to be the next big jump. So it's not just like a little like progression, like phones got a little faster, satellite, internet, got a little
Right.
more accessible. Now it's like, oh wait, now we're moving from centralized servers with Amazon, Google, Facebook really owning most of the internet to now decentralization of internet where we can all kind of run these servers out of our houses with mining machines and or we could cryptocurrency where we have a decentralized internet money and NFTs where we can own digital items or virtual reality where we can actually go to places with an avatar and interact with each other in a three-dimensional environment that we can't do on a flat screen. So in many ways, it's just such a significant jump from what is to what's been that's where it makes sense to move just like Web 1 to Web 2. Like eBay was such a massive jump from basically a static website.
Yep.
Facebook was such a big jump from a basic website. This interactivity made it a jump from Web 1 to Web 2. Now we're perceivably going to another significant jump in hardware accessibility and basically the way the internet, we behave on the internet and interact on the internet, that it makes sense to call it Web 3 because it is such a significant progression of the internet.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And so I have a few questions that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
That I want to dive some trends that you would be old enough to remember. That maybe I don't quite that's a cheap shot. It's more that Nils has been paying attention to this for a lot longer than I have. But before that, I noticed you mentioned Starlink. I'm curious, and maybe people online on Twitter can interact with us and let us know. I wonder if we're going to have any episodes this year where we do not mention Elon Musk in some form or fashion. We're 2 for 2 so far to start 2023. It was just a curiosity. And we're also going to take a moment and talk about our agency. I have this dope Amplify social media hat on. Actually, underneath my Pray.com sweatshirt, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see me lift my sweatshirt up.
You got
my
Amplify
social media shirt on as well. And Nils, we actually have a whole team that can help our listeners answer some of these questions and make some of these jumps. Maybe your whole church is functioning out of email and a website and you need to get on social media for the first time. We can help you do that. We can also help you think about strategizing around cryptocurrency and all things Web3, NFTs. Our team has been deep down those rabbit holes, mostly because of Nils. Hey, can we do this? Hey, can we try this? Hey, can we do this? And so we just want to let each of you know we have an opportunity here to partner and come alongside you. And if you're wondering what it looks like to partner with us, you can go to amplifysocial.media. Is that the website, Nils, or
Yep,
am I just talking at this point in time? Okay.
Yeah,
amplifysocial.media. You can head there. There's some testimonials of some of the people that we work with. And it is a partnership, Nils. I mean, we come alongside. We're not just running a play for you. We're actually joining your team. And it's a really exciting thing because we see the gospel get advanced and we can help you do that in ways that maybe you don't have the tools for or don't have the expertise with. But whether you think you might be in that camp or not, just hop on a call with us. We'd be happy to. I'd be happy to meet with you and figure this out. And we're not going to sell you on something you don't need. So don't be fearful of that. This podcast isn't going anywhere. But we do want to let you know that it's not Nils or I that makes this podcast. It is our team at Amplify Social Media. Okay. Anything to add there, Nils? You feel like we covered Amplify? Okay.
We did.
Technically, this is Nils' team. I just get to talk about it.
And you're part of it. You're part of it.
We're both part of it. But
building this together.
This was Nils' baby. I'm the adoptive father that's coming in. However we want to do that. It is 2023. Okay. Before we move past Web 2 into Web 3, are there similarities Nils, between what you remember from the jump from Web 1 to Web 2 that you're seeing now from Web 2 to Web 3? And as you think about some answers to that, what I'm really getting at is it seems to me like AOL is looked back on and it is like fondly remembered. Like, yeah, I had this handle. I was chatting with this, right? And then, oh, Facebook was awesome. Mark Zuckerberg, we all watched The Social Network, Stanford, it was crazy. And now it's this huge thing in Twitter, early days, right? And we're living in the middle of this potential jump right now. And all of it is cryptocurrencies, fake. What are NFTs? This is so ridiculous. Like, just let me go back on Facebook where I belong. Like all of these things, right? What was the jump from Web 1 to Web 2 similar or different to what we're experiencing now from 2 to 3?
I think it's hard to say. I think as you look at the jump, and maybe we can just talk about some of the mistakes people made going from Web 1 to Web 2.
Let's do that because I think that's going to be helpful as we think about Web 2 to 3.
And this is where I think it's very different. Because with Web 1 to Web 2, I think a lot of churches and ministries are very resistant to the internet altogether. But then it's like by the time they embraced having a website and email, it's like, oh, and now you should get a Facebook and a MySpace and a Twitter. And they're like, it's too much. It's too much. And I don't like it. And it's weird. And it's unhealthy. And we shouldn't have church. We shouldn't have phones in church. And so we really resisted Web 2, honestly, up until the pandemic. I would say the pandemic is what really led to full mass adoption.
That's facts. 2020 up to 2020.
Yes, and right. It was like 10 years too late for those that were just beginning to embrace Web 2. What I see churches doing now is over embracing Web 3, where they're like, can you help us get on the metaverse? Can you help us create an NFT strategy? And it's like, yeah, I could, but it's really not a good use of your time, energy, and resources right now. It's too early. Yeah. So instead of like just focus on where you are and be ready, be paying attention, but it doesn't mean you need to go all in. Like maybe you start accepting cryptocurrency for the 3 people in your church who want to give cryptocurrency, which I think you should do, but it's not time to like, okay, we're now basically, because we missed Web 2, we're just going to skip Web 2 and go to Web 3. You have to, it's a plus game. And so this is the thing about Web 1 is your website is still very important. Your emailing your congregation is still very important. It's actually more important, I would say, than social media. So your Web 1 strategy today is still more important than your Web 2 strategy. If you're doing social media great and you don't have a good website, you're not investing your time and energy right. You need to make sure you have a good website and email so that your social media can help expand that. And then as you add Web 3 to it, you need to have a good Web 2 strategy that also helps augment your Web 1 strategy, which then Web 3 enhances even further. So it's an and game. And I know it feels like for churches like, oh, I got to do more. And the answer is yes. The other side, Aaron, as I ramble through all of this,
this is really good, Nils, because we need to understand, and I'm glad you brought value. Web 1 is just as, if not more important today than it was when it started.
Yes.
And Web 2 adds to that. And Web 3 it's not going to be any different. It's not crushing Web 2 and Web 1 and it's just all gone. Guys, this is the answer to the question of the podcast. Yes, it's still relevant, and it's probably going to be more relevant in 10 years than it was today. So you got to jump on it today, optimize it today. And also, by the way, don't forget about Web 1. So this is really good, Nils.
It changes. And this is the other reality is Web 1 has changed. Web 1 isn't the same as it was. Like your website needs to be mobile compatible now. Your website is actually easier than ever because we've got platforms like WordPress and Squarespace. Yep. What I would have done for that when I was building church websites 15 years ago on front page and with HTML. And so now it's a lot easier to have a website. Your website needs to be search engine optimized.
And to be fair, AOL died.
Yeah.
So there was stuff that died.
100%. Like if you, and MySpace died and Facebook is dying. And so like with Web 2, there are platforms. That's why this podcast, I think, is still so relevant there are platforms that are coming and there are platforms that are going, and we have to continue to develop our Web 1 strategy. We have to
That's right.
continue to develop our Web 2 strategy while we begin to build our Web 3 strategy.
That's good.
And I think that's the flow, that's the mindset that we've got to have as we move forward into.
Which problem would you rather have, Nils? Which problem would you rather have? Churches that are, this is confusing and from the devil mindset, or we should have done NFT launch Easter of 2020 and we missed the boat? What mindset would you rather deal with?
I am so grateful to be talking churches off the ledge of jumping in too soon. And so it feels so good that churches are like, man, I wish I would have jumped in, or I'm so ready to jump into this new technology, or I wish I would have jumped in sooner. Where I don't feel like I'm arguing of should you do this or should you not do this, hardly at all anymore. It's really how do we most effectively do this. And I think the hardest thing right now in this shifting landscape is letting go of the platforms that aren't performing as well. So like Facebook, so many churches spend a lot of energy and time on Facebook, and they're having a hard time letting go of that because they're like, look, we built a following of 20,000, page likes on our page. And I'm like, yeah, but you got 2 people seeing your content now. Is it still worth who cares that there's 20,000? There's 2 people actually looking at it. And so you've got to, sometimes you got to let things go. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to let go of Facebook, but I use that as an example of you got to let it go sometimes. And
Nils and I have both worked in churches, and I'm laughing because Facebook is just the new carpet, is the new grandma's church chair, is the new, right? Like the churches that have historically done it the best and been able to pass on their legacy from generation to generation to generation are the churches that don't have the sacred cows per se, for lack of a better illustration, in the pews, right? They're able to lay it down when it needs to be laid down, and we're going to get new carpet, and we're going to get new chairs, and we're going to do the things. And so the same is true online. And to your point, Nils, no nostalgia here. We are interested in attention because the gospel needs to be in front of the people where they're paying attention, because that's who needs the gospel. And so we've always said it. You've always said it, right? Social media is tools. All web is a tool, and we are technology. I think this is you, right? Technology agnostic, right? We don't care about the technologies. We're not loyal to the technologies or the platforms. We're loyal to the due diligence of making sure that the gospel is getting in front of more people with the new tools that are presenting themselves every day. And we're here to be your guides for that.
I love it. That's it. Man, what a good conversation, an important conversation. I just want to thank everybody for listening. If you would, leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you're listening. That means the world to us. We read all of those and learn from them as well. And if we can do anything for you, don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach out to us on amplifysocial.media. We'd love to help come alongside your church through that. Or answer any questions you might have strategically about how your church needs to approach social media. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we will talk to you again on the next episode.